The docking clamps engaged with a hollow thud that reverberated through the hull of Adrian Sirac's shuttle. Through the viewport, Grendel Station loomed like a massive, dying beast. Its once sleek metal skin was now pitted and scarred, dotted with flickering exterior lights that sparked like the last neurons firing in a decaying brain. "Final approach complete," announced the automated system. "Warning, life support systems on Grendel Station at 26% capacity. Recommend minimal exposure." Adrian adjusted the salvage engineer's uniform that hung loose on his frame. Too many meals skipped to afford parts for the Glasswing, his modest freighter. He ran calloused fingers over the hilt of the rusted sword strapped to his belt. An odd choice of equipment for a salvage mission, but one he never questioned. "Marcus on," he murmured, tracing the crude etching on the blade. The sword was pre-stellar, a relic of Earth that had passed from one dissenter to another for generations. Its edge was pitted, the steel discolored with streaks of orange rust. Yet something about it spoke of dignity that outlasted empires. The airlock cycled open with a hiss, releasing a cloud of stale, metallic-scented air. Adrian's crew, 3 silent, pragmatic rimworlders, filed past him without ceremony. They'd done this dance before. Enter, salvage, exit. No questions about the politics that condemn spaces like Grendel to abandonment. No wonderings about the souls who perished here. "Toma, take the secondary generators. Lissa, comm systems. Vex, life support components," Adrian instructed, his voice echoing in the cavernous docking bay. "I'll handle the structural assessment of Sector 12. Sector 12, the maintenance tunnels, had shown unusual energy fluctuations during their preliminary scan. Probably nothing more than faulty wiring, but worth investigating before the station's orbit finally degraded and it plunged into the nearby red dwarf. The station's interior was worse than the exterior suggested. Amber emergency lights flickered at irregular intervals, casting grotesque shadows across walls streaked with mysterious growths, some fungal organism that had evolved to thrive in the station's unique decay. The stench of rotted foodstuffs mingled with the sharp tang of electrical fires, long since burned out. Adrian moved cautiously, pausing when his boots crushed something beneath them. A feeding bowl, cracked and stained. The Acer Empire didn't waste resources on prisoner comfort. The bowl's cheap polymer had likely contained the same gray nutrient paste served 3 times daily until the prisoner either died or completed their sentence, though everyone knew release from Grendel was rare. As he ventured deeper into Sector 12, the maintenance tunnels narrowed. Pipes ran along the ceiling, occasionally dripping condensation that left rusty trails down the walls. His handheld scanner beeped softly, detecting the energy anomaly growing stronger. "That's odd," he muttered to himself. According to the station schematics, this corridor should end in a simple juncture of conduits. Instead, as he rounded the corner, he found himself facing a hatch that didn't appear on any blueprint. The hatch was unlike anything else on the station. Where Grendel's infrastructure was utilitarian and cheaply constructed, this was clearly ancient, its metal predating the station itself by centuries. The surface gleamed with a peculiar bioluminescent glow that traced intricate molecular patterns across the seal. Advanced technology disguised as primitive craftsmanship. Adrian ran his scanner over the anomalous door. The readings made no sense. The metal composition matched no known alloy in his database, and the molecular bonds were impossibly tight, adaptive, almost intelligent in their configuration. He reached for his plasma torch, adjusting it to its highest setting. The blue flame licked against the hatch's edge, but the metal didn't even warm. Next, he tried the industrial cutting laser, powerful enough to slice through hull plating. The beam scattered harmlessly across the surface, leaving no mark. It was then that he noticed a small viewport, no larger than his palm, embedded in the hatch's center. Wiping away centuries of grime, he peered through the reinforced glass. At first, There was only darkness. Then, movement. A shifting of shadows that coalesced into a humanoid form. A face appeared in the viewport, so suddenly that Adrian stumbled backward. Blue-tinged skin stretched tight over aristocratic features. Eyes that had once been fierce, now hollowed by centuries of isolation. A woman, her hair shorn close to her scalp, dressed in tattered remnants of what might have been a uniform. Their gazes locked, and something flickered in those ancient eyes. Recognition, awareness, hope. In that moment, acting on an impulse he couldn't name, Adrian's hand went to the rusted sword at his belt. Without allowing himself to question the absurdity, he drew the blade and struck at the molecular seal. The sound that followed defied physics, a crystalline shattering, as if reality itself had cracked. The bioluminescent patterns flared brilliantly, then died. The hatch, which had withstood industrial cutting tools and the vacuum of space for centuries, swung open with the groan of metal that had not moved in 300 years. Adrian stood frozen, the rusted sword still extended, its edge now glowing with residual energy from the broken seal. The realization struck him like a physical blow. No blade for 300 years had broken those bonds, yet this relic from old Earth had done it with a single swing. From within the darkened chamber beyond, the woman's voice emerged, cracked and hoarse from disuse. 3 centuries of silence, shattered by conscience. She slumped forward against ancient chains that still bound her to the far wall, her eyes never leaving the rusted sword in Adrian's trembling hand. The chamber beyond the broken hatch was a testament to obsessive memory. Every square centimeter of wall space was covered in etchings, thousands upon thousands of names, battle coordinates, dates, and fragmentary pleas. They spiraled outward from where the blue-skinned woman hung limply against her restraints, each carving made with painstaking precision despite the primitive tools available. "Who are you?" Adrian whispered, stepping carefully into the chamber. The air was stale but breathable, preserved by whatever technology had sealed the hatch. The woman's head lifted slowly, as if the weight of centuries pressed upon her neck. "Lena Valsaria," she rasped, the words coming with obvious effort. "Commander of the 7th Kurdan Legion, prisoner of conscience, memory keeper." She spoke in an archaic dialect of imperial standard, the formal cadences of the early empire still evident despite her weakened state. With deliberate movements, she pulled against her remaining chains, metallic links clanking against the walls adorned with her carvings. Adrian approached cautiously, the rusted sword still in his hand. Up close, the molecular composition of her restraints matched the hatch, the same adaptive material that had resisted all modern cutting tools. But when he touched the edge of the rusted blade to the chains, they parted like paper, crumbling to the floor. Lena collapsed forward, falling into Adrian's arms with unexpected lightness. Her body, though tall and retaining the muscular frame of a warrior, felt hollow, skin and bone sustained by whatever preservation field had kept her alive for centuries. "The names," she whispered, gesturing weakly at the walls. "I kept them. Every prisoner who died here, every village destroyed, every voice silenced. I carved their stories so they wouldn't vanish." Adrian scanned the walls, the sheer volume of text overwhelming. Some names were etched deep and bold, others tiny and cramped where space grew scarce. Dates, locations, brief epitaphs, a comprehensive history of forgotten atrocities, preserved by one woman's relentless dedication. "Why were you imprisoned?" he asked, helping her to sit with her back against the wall. Lena's hollow eyes focused somewhere distant. "Bolaros," she said, the name clearly painful. "Mining colony, outer rim, children there, families." Her breathing grew labored with emotion. "Orders came to purge the settlement. Insurgent sympathizers. They said, but I saw. Just people. Scared people. You disobeyed the order," Adrian concluded. "I refused." her voice strengthened with pride. My legion stood down. For that mercy, branded traitor. A bitter smile crossed her cracked lips. My own sister passed judgment. Empress Sienna Valsaria needed an example. Better to sacrifice one commander than risk others questioning orders. Adrian's handheld scanner suddenly blared an alarm. The breaking of Lena's chains had triggered ancient security protocols. Throughout Sector 12, dormant systems were awakening. Weapon systems, containment drones, automated turrets. We need to move, he said, helping Lena to her feet. Can you walk? Her legs trembled, but held her weight. 300 years, she murmured. And I never forgot how. They made their way through the flickering corridor, the station's awakened defenses converging on their location. At the first junction, a spherical drone dropped from a ceiling port, its targeting laser painting a red dot on Lena's chest. Before it could fire, Adrian swung the ancient sword through its central processor, surprising himself with the fluid motion. He was an engineer, not a fighter. Lena moved with unexpected grace despite her weakened state. Centuries of isolation had not erased the muscle memory of martial discipline. When a second drone appeared, she pivoted smoothly, using the momentum of her turn to drive the rusted sword, which Adrian had instinctively handed to her, into the machine's sensor array. You still remember combat training after 3 centuries? Adrian asked, as they ducked into a maintenance shaft. Some things, Lena responded. Her breathing labored but controlled. The body never forgets. They fought their way through Grendel's awakening defenses, Adrian improvising with salvage tools, while Lena wielded the rusted sword with the precision of a veteran commander. When the blade sliced through a power conduit, the resulting energy surge stalled, pursuing drones long enough for them to reach a transport pad near the docking bay. My shuttle's in orbit, Adrian explained, frantically working to jury-rig the long-abandoned teleporter. If I can get enough power to this pad, we might make the jump. As circuits sparked beneath his fingers, Lena stood at the pad's edge, looking back at the station that had been her prison. Her expression was unreadable. Not quite sorrow, not quite victory, but something more complex. The gaze of someone leaving behind their own history. They tried to erase us, she said softly. But I kept carving, night after night, year after year. Our names, our truths. The transport pad hummed to life, illuminating their faces with pale blue light. Ready? Adrian asked. Lena nodded once, clutching the rusted sword to her chest like a talisman. For 3 centuries. I've been ready. The teleportation sequence engaged, dissolving their forms into particles of light as Grendel's station receded beneath them. A graveyard of forgotten souls whose names were carried forward in the memory of the one prisoner who refused to let them vanish. The Glasswing was a testament to functional aesthetics over beauty. A battered freighter with minimal cargo capacity, just enough stealth systems to evade routine Imperial patrols, and a medical bay that doubled as storage when not in use. As the ship broke orbit from Grendel Station, Adrian watched Lena drift in the zero-gravity medbay, her body suspended in a nutrient solution that worked to restore 3 centuries of cellular damage. Her blue-tinged skin absorbed the revitalizing compounds at an impressive rate, suggesting genetic modifications common to Imperial military elite. Her eyes remained closed, but their movements beneath translucent lids indicated she was far from unconscious, perhaps reliving memories long suppressed. Adrian's crew had accepted the unexpected passenger with characteristic pragmatism. To them, salvage operations often yielded bizarre finds. A woman imprisoned for centuries was unusual, but not worth risking payment over. They asked no questions when Adrian ordered immediate departure, nor when he plotted a course away from established Imperial lanes. On the 3rd day, as the Glasswing drifted through the empty space between inhabited systems, Lena's eyes snapped open. She pulled herself from the suspension tank with fluid grace, adapting to the ship's artificial gravity with only a moment's disorientation. Your body's recovering remarkably well, Adrian observed, offering her a simple flight suit to replace the medical gown. Kurdan Legion, she explained, accepting the clothing. All commanders underwent genetic enhancement for extended battlefield deployment. My body remembers its purpose. As she dressed, Adrian noticed the precision of her movements, each gesture economical, deliberate, even weakened by centuries of confinement. She moved like a weapon. "Where are we headed?" she asked, following him to the ship's small galley. "Nowhere specific yet," Adrian admitted, preparing a nutrient drink suitable for her recovering digestive system. "I'm still processing the fact that I've got an Imperial commander from 3 centuries ago aboard my salvage vessel." Lena accepted the drink but didn't immediately consume it. "Former commander," she corrected. "Traitor to the Empire, according to official records." "Those records are ancient history now," Adrian said. Her gaze sharpened. "Is the Empire ancient history as well?" "No," Adrian shook his head. "The Acer Empire still rules most inhabited systems. Different emperors, same principles. Obedience above all." "And my sister?" The question came quietly. "Empress Sienna Valsaria?" "Long dead," Adrian confirmed. "But her legacy continues. The Imperial line remains unbroken." Lena nodded slowly, absorbing the information. "Then my work remains unfinished." In the days that followed, as the Glasswing traversed the outskirts of settled space, Lena recounted her story in full, not just the highlights Adrian had gleaned in their escape, but the details that made it human. She spoke of her childhood alongside Sienna, both girls groomed for leadership. She described her rise through military ranks, valued for tactical brilliance, tempered with unusual compassion for a Legion commander. "We were taught that mercy was weakness," she explained, sitting cross-legged on the observation deck, the rusted sword across her knees. "But I found it made better soldiers. Men and women fight harder when they believe in something beyond fear." The fateful day at Bellaros Colony emerged in fragments, her shuttle landing amidst homes and hydroponics gardens, children watching from windows, miners with weathered faces who had no connection to insurgents beyond occupying the same moon. The transmission ordering their extinction, her refusal, transmitted back to Imperial Command in clear, unmistakable language. "Legion 7 stands down. These people are not our enemies." "The tribunal was swift," she continued, her voice distant. "My sister presided personally. Her face betrayed nothing when she pronounced my sentence. I was to be erased, not just executed. My name stripped from history. My existence reduced to a cautionary myth for officers who might consider disobedience." Adrian listened, increasingly troubled. "If I broadcast your existence now, the entire Imperial Navy will hunt us down," he said finally. "Perhaps it would be safer to let you fade into obscurity." Lena's gaze hardened. "My death in obscurity is exactly what they want," she countered. "If I am not seen, all those lives I carved into metal were for nothing. All those names, forgotten again." Before Adrian could respond, the ship's communication system chimed, indicating an incoming transmission from a nearby system. The screen illuminated with the face of a young woman, her features sharp and intelligent beneath a crown of tightly coiled hair adorned with data chips, the distinctive mark of a Rimworld information broker. "Serac," the woman greeted, her eyes flicking curiously to Lena. "Word travels even in vacuum. You've found something interesting on Grendel." "Kira Thorne," Adrian acknowledged. "Still trading in rumors." "Information," she corrected, "is the only currency that never devalues." Her attention remained fixed on Lena. "The Ghost Commander, I presume, thought you were just a myth designed to scare Imperial cadets straight." Lena stepped forward. "How do you know of me?" Kira's smile revealed teeth filed to points, a cosmetic choice popular among data runners who prided themselves on their appetite for secrets. "There are always whispers, fragments that slip through sensors, For those who know how to listen, the Empire's silence speaks volumes. A new alliance formed in that moment. Adrian's practical engineering skills, Lena's military experience, and Kira's network of information channels. Within hours, the Glasswing altered course toward Kira's hidden outpost in the next system, where they would begin the dangerous work of spreading Lena's truth throughout the galaxy. Kira's domain proved to be a labyrinth of contradictions, a data hub disguised as a dilapidated supply depot, orbiting a gas giant. Inside, cramped corridors opened unexpectedly into vast server rooms, humming with illegal quantum processors. Holographic interfaces flickered in every available space, displaying fragmented news feeds from across the Empire. "We start small," Kira explained, demonstrating how she would seed Lena's story. Hand-copied files hidden in routine shipping manifests, encrypted text fragments inserted into subspace beggars' broadcasts. Nothing that triggers Imperial algorithms. Adrian watched as Lena recorded her testimony. Brief, powerful accounts of what she had witnessed and why she had chosen conscience over obedience. Her voice grew stronger with each telling, the centuries of isolation falling away as she reclaimed her identity. They achieved small victories. On 3 frontier worlds, underground networks began circulating fragments of Lena's story. A mining colony similar to Belarus erected a small memorial to conscience, its symbolism obscure enough to evade Imperial censors. A cadet academy instructor risked career execution to include ethical dilemma scenarios based on Lena's decision. But setbacks followed swiftly. Imperial informants infiltrated a rebel cell on Terrace Prime, resulting in public executions of local organizers. Suspicion fell on Adrian when security footage captured his distinctive salvage uniform at a nearby port. They narrowly escaped an Imperial patrol by sacrificing the Glasswing's last decoy beacon. "They're taking us seriously now," Kira observed grimly as they regrouped in a sleepy cantina on an anonymous trading post. "Admiral Trask Valen himself has been assigned to your capture. The bounty on your heads would buy a small moon." Lena absorbed this news with stoic calm, but Adrian noticed the tremor in her hands as she set down her drink, a physical weakness she struggled to conceal. Centuries of imprisonment had taken their toll, despite her enhanced physiology. She developed fevers that came and went without warning, tremors that sometimes rendered her immobile for hours. "We need to find you proper medical care," Adrian insisted, after one particularly severe episode left her unconscious for nearly a day. "What I need," Lena countered weakly, "is to complete my mission before this body fails entirely." It was Kira who suggested their next move. "The Outer Tech Bazaar on Nerethi 9, she proposed. "If anyone can stabilize her condition and tell us more about that mysterious sword of yours, it's the outlaws there." Nerethi 9 proved to be exactly as advertised. An asteroid hollowed out and transformed into a chaotic marketplace where legality was determined solely by one's ability to pay for protection. Stalls spilled into cramped walkways. Vendors hawking everything from outlawed augmentations to reverse-engineered Imperial weapons. They found Amid Bricksil in a workshop near the asteroid's core, a hunched figure with 6 prosthetic arms, working simultaneously on different projects. His face, largely replaced with chrome plating after some ancient accident, regarded them with lenses that whirred as they focused. "Interesting," he commented, when Adrian presented the rusted sword for examination. "Pre-stellar steel alloy, earth-forged. No special properties detectable by conventional scans." His head tilted. "Yet you claim it broke molecular bonds that resist modern cutting tools?" "We witnessed it," Adrian confirmed. Amidbrick's mechanical fingers traced the blade's edge with delicate precision. "There's a theory," he mused, "that certain objects accumulate significance. Not mystical nonsense, mind you. Quantum entanglement at a molecular level. Probability manipulation through concentrated human intent." "Meaning?" Lena prompted. meaning this blade has been held by many hands with similar purpose. Each wielder imprinted something upon it, not magic, but a subtle realignment of its atomic structure. Enough hands, enough similar intent. He gestured vaguely. Improbabilities become possible. While Lena underwent treatment in a Midbricks medical chamber, the engineer issued a warning to Adrian. If you broadcast the blade's molecular pattern, Imperial Forensics will trace any further breaches of their molecular locks back to you. They're already developing countermeasures. Later, while securing medical supplies, Adrian intercepted a fragmented Imperial communique on an unsecured frequency. It mentioned a project designation that sent ice through his veins. Eradicator, an experimental molecular scythe designed to remove unwanted persons from existence. The target list included one name he recognized immediately: Valsaria, Lena. When he shared this discovery with Lena and Kira, the implications were clear. The Empire wasn't just hunting them. It was developing technology to erase Lena permanently, body and memory vaporized from reality itself. We're running out of time, Lena concluded, her voice steady, despite the tremor that still occasionally shook her frame. If we cannot reach enough people before this eradicator is deployed, everything I've preserved will be lost. Kira paced the small room they'd rented in Nerethi 9's lower levels. Small transmissions aren't enough anymore. We need something bigger, something they can't ignore or contain. The Imperial capital, Lena said suddenly. Orion Prime, the Day of Remembrance. Adrian stared at her. That's suicide. The most heavily guarded location in the galaxy, during their most secured public event? Precisely why it's perfect, Lena countered. Every citizen will be watching, every transmission frequency open, and my sister's descendants will be forced to face what the Empire tried to bury. The plan was audacious to the point of madness. But as Adrian studied Lena's face, the determination that had sustained her through 3 centuries of isolation, he realized that no amount of hiding could save them now. The only path forward was straight through the heart of the Empire itself. Orion Prime gleamed like a sapphire against the void, its surface a mosaic of crystal domes and towering spires that caught the light of its binary suns. Orbital defense platforms formed a protective lattice around the planet, their weapons arrays tracking every vessel that approached the sacred Imperial homeworld. Adrian, Lena, and Kira had spent weeks preparing for this infiltration. Their shuttle, a nondescript spice freighter borrowed from an unscrupulous merchant on Nerethi 9, transmitted forged credentials as it joined the queue of vessels delivering goods for the Day of Remembrance celebration. Identification confirmed, came the automated response from Starhaven Station, the massive docking complex in high orbit above Orion Prime. Proceed to Bay 94 for customs inspection. Lena sat rigid in her seat, her appearance drastically altered by cosmetic implants that changed her blue-tinged skin to the golden hue fashionable among Imperial elites. Her cropped hair now fell in elaborate braids, interwoven with data crystals, a style that marked her as a minor academic from the outer systems. The disguise was convincing, but it couldn't hide the intensity in her eyes as she gazed upon the homeworld she'd been torn from centuries ago. Remember, Kira cautioned, the biometric scans are the real challenge. They'll be looking for genetic markers that match known dissidents. My genetic profile isn't in their system, Lena noted. I was erased, not cataloged. Adrian nodded. And we've got a Midbricks bypass patch for the scanner anyway. As long as we stick to the service corridors noted in the old schematics file Kira pulled, we should avoid the highest security zones. Their shuttle docked with a gentle shudder. Beyond the viewport, Starhaven Station bustled with activity. Uniformed officials directing cargo loaders, merchant crews arguing over shipping rates, and maintenance drones zipping through designated flight paths. The sheer normalcy of the scene was their best camouflage. The customs inspection proved surprisingly cursory. Their cargo, crates of exotic spices purportedly from the Centauri moons, received only a perfunctory scan before being cleared for transport to the surface. The inspector, a bored-looking official who'd likely processed hundreds of similar shipments that day, barely glanced at their identification chips before waving them through. "That was too easy," Adrian muttered as they boarded the atmospheric transport. "Imperial arrogance," Lena replied softly. "They believe their security is impenetrable, so they grow complacent about the small things." The descent to Orion Prime's surface revealed the full splendor of the Imperial capital. Beneath crystalline domes that regulated temperature and filtered harmful radiation, a city of impossible beauty spread across the landscape. Marble boulevards lined with ancient trees connected monumental structures that housed the various branches of imperial governance. Hollow banners, 50 meters tall, flickered between buildings, displaying the face of the current empress, a woman whose features bore an unsettling resemblance to the sister who had condemned Lena centuries ago. As their transport touched down at a commercial port in the city's outer ring, Kira activated a small device concealed in her palm. "Surveillance dampener," she explained. "Won't make us invisible, but it'll blur facial recognition algorithms just enough to buy us time." They moved through the crowded streets with purposeful anonymity. 3 more visitors among thousands who had come to witness the Day of Remembrance ceremony. Everywhere, preparations for the upcoming event transformed the already opulent city into a showcase of imperial might. Military units rehearsed precision marches along the boulevards. Technicians adjusted massive sound amplifiers that would carry the Empress's speech to the farthest reaches of the central plaza. That plaza, known as the Heart of Empire, would be their target. While citizens gathered to hear the annual address ostensibly honoring heroes who forged the empire, but actually reinforcing obedience, Adrian and Kira would access the maintenance tunnels beneath the podium. There, they would plant the transmitters that would broadcast Lena's testimony across every public holoscreen on Orion Prime. "The access point should be just ahead," Kira murmured, consulting a schematic displayed on her retinal implant. "Service entrance camouflaged as a waste reclamation unit." They found it exactly where the ancient blueprints indicated, a nondescript panel that slid aside when Kira applied the correct pressure sequence. Beyond lay a narrow passage that spiraled downward into the substructure of the plaza. The air grew cool and damp as they descended, the sounds of the city muffled by meters of composite materials. "Remarkable," Lena observed, running her fingers along the tunnel walls. These passages were part of the original design, evacuation routes for the imperial family in case of uprising. "My father showed them to Sienna and me when we were children." Adrian glanced at her. "You never mentioned your father." "Emperor Tolan Valsaria," Lena said quietly. "A complicated man. He taught us that an empire fears nothing more than questions, because questions lead to choices, and choices lead to conscience." They reached a junction where the maintenance tunnel branched in 3 directions. Kira consulted her schematic again. "We split up here. Adrian, you'll plant transmitters in the eastern section, covering the military audience. I'll take the western approach for the civilian sectors." Lena. "I know my role," Lena affirmed. The plan called for her to remain hidden until the crucial moment, then emerge only when the transmission was secure. But plans, even those crafted with meticulous care, rarely survive contact with reality. They had just separated when alarms blared through the tunnels, not the localized alert they might have triggered, but a station-wide security protocol. Through the grated floor beneath them, they could see Imperial guards flooding the plaza above, evacuating civilians with urgent efficiency. "Something's wrong," Kira hissed, rejoining them at the junction. "This isn't about us. The entire security grid just went into lockdown." A distant explosion rocked the substructure, sending dust cascading from the ceiling. Then another, closer. "Terrorist attack," Adrian realized. "Someone else chose the Day of Remembrance for a statement." Kira's expression darkened. "This changes everything. They'll sweep these tunnels within minutes." Lena's face remained impassive, but Adrian recognized the calculation in her eyes. The commander, assessing a battlefield that had suddenly shifted. "We adapt," she said simply. "The chaos provides cover we didn't anticipate." Above them, through the service grates, they could see Imperial officials hurrying the Empress toward a secure bunker beneath the podium, exactly where they had planned to plant their transmitters. Guards formed a protective cordon around her, weapons drawn against unseen threats. "Now," Lena decided, "while they're focused on the Empress's safety, we make our move." Before Adrian or Kira could object, Lena was moving, not retreating deeper into the tunnels, but ascending a narrow maintenance ladder that led directly to the plaza. The strategic audacity stunned Adrian. In the midst of a security crisis, no one would expect a fugitive to move toward the center of Imperial power rather than away from it. They followed, emerging through a service hatch into the chaos of the evacuating plaza. Emergency strobes bathed the scene in pulses of red light. The massive holoscreens that lined the square displayed security alerts and evacuation instructions. Imperial guards shouted orders to panicked civilians, their attention divided between crowd control and scanning for additional threats. Moving with the calculated confidence of someone who belonged exactly where she stood, Lena approached the nearest holoscreen control node, a rectangular panel partially concealed by decorative stonework. Kira darted forward, slipping the prepared data spike into the access port, while Adrian positioned himself to block the view of passing guards. The screen flickered, cycling through emergency protocols, then stabilized with the Imperial crest. For one heart-stopping moment, Adrian thought they had failed. Then, the image dissolved, replaced by Lena's face, not as she appeared now, but as she had recorded her testimony, blue-skinned, hollow-eyed, bearing the visible weight of centuries of isolation. "I am Lena Valsaria." Her recorded voice rang out across the plaza. "Commander of the 7th Kurdan Legion, for 300 years. I have been imprisoned on Grendel Station for refusing an order to massacre the innocent citizens of Belarus Colony." Throughout the plaza, identical images appeared on every screen. Imperial technicians scrambled to override the transmission, but Kira's virus spread faster than they could contain it. Citizens who had been rushing toward exits stopped, transfixed by the unexpected broadcast. "For 3 centuries," the recording continued, "I carved their names into metal walls so the galaxy would not forget them. Today, I stand free, even as you try to bury me again." On the far side of the plaza, a commotion erupted near the Imperial security cordon. Guards suddenly closed ranks, weapons raised toward some unseen threat. Above the general alarm, a single voice cut through, imperious, commanding, unmistakably royal. "Stand down, I will see her." The crowd of guards parted reluctantly, revealing the Empress herself, Sienna Valsaria's descendant, heir to the throne that had condemned Lena. She moved forward with measured steps, white-gloved hand extended. Her eyes searched the chaotic plaza until they locked on Lena, who had stepped out from their hiding place, removing her disguise to reveal her true features. A hush fell over the plaza as the two women faced each other across 30 meters of open space. The current Empress and the commander whose existence had been erased from Imperial records. In that moment of silent recognition, 3 centuries of lies hung in the balance. "Lena Valsaria," the Empress acknowledged, her amplified voice carrying across the stunned crowd. "You were removed from our history for a reason. Your story threatens the very foundation of Imperial stability." Lena stepped forward, her posture straight, despite the tremor that still occasionally shook her frame. "I was removed because the Empire fears truth," she replied, her voice equally clear. "A just empire does not silence conscience to preserve control." "You don't understand," the Empress countered, her composure slipping slightly. "If your story spreads, hundreds of worlds will erupt in anarchy, Billions could die in the resulting chaos. Is that the conscience you defend? I defended the lives of innocent colonists, Lena said. My sister sacrificed her own blood to preserve a lie. What does that tell your subjects about their value to the throne? The standoff might have continued. Two women separated by centuries, yet bound by the same moral question. Had an overzealous guard not interpreted Lena's advance as a threat? His plasma rifle discharged with a sound like tearing fabric, the bolt streaking across the plaza. Kira saw it coming. Without hesitation, she threw herself into the path of the plasma bolt meant for Lena. The energy struck her squarely in the chest, instantly cauterizing the wound it created through her heart. She crumpled without a sound, her body folding to the marble like a puppet with cut strings. The plaza erupted into chaos. Citizens who had been watching in stunned silence now scattered in terror or surged forward in rage. Imperial guards attempted to restore order, but for every person they restrained, 3 more pushed past them. The carefully choreographed ceremony had transformed into the very uprising the Empire had spent centuries preventing. In the confusion, a stray plasma shard, perhaps a ricochet from another guard's weapon, caught Lena in the side. She staggered, crimson blooming across her stolen Imperial garments. Adrian rushed to her, supporting her weight as they retreated toward the maintenance tunnels. They weren't alone. A handful of Imperial veterans, officers who had recognized Lena's insignia and remembered the legends of the Ghost Commander, broke ranks to help them escape. Together, they descended back into the service passageways, sealing the entrance as alarms continued to blare above. "Kira!" Lena gasped as Adrian applied pressure to her wound. She didn't hesitate. Not for a second. "She believed in your truth," Adrian said simply. "We all do." They made their way through the tunnels to a hidden medical cell, one of many emergency stations built into the substructure for precisely such crises. The Imperial veterans who had joined them stood guard, while Adrian worked frantically to stabilize Lena's deteriorating condition. But some wounds transcend medical intervention. The plasma shard had penetrated too deeply, its energy signature disrupting the already fragile cellular structure of her ancient body. As monitoring equipment tracked her fading life signs, Lena motioned Adrian closer. "Recording," she whispered. "One last testimony." Understanding immediately, Adrian activated his personal comm unit, setting it to capture audio. Lena's voice, though weakened, retained the commanding presence that had once led legions. "This is my imperial confession," she began. "I, Lena Valsaria, refused an unlawful order at Bellaros colony because conscience demanded it. For that choice, I endured 3 centuries of solitude, carving the names of the forgotten into metal, so they would not vanish from memory. Today I die, but the truth lives. Freedom is not given or taken, it is chosen, again and again, even when the cost is everything you love. My sister chose empire over truth. Kira chose sacrifice over safety. What will you choose?" Her gaze locked with Adrian's as she continued, each word measured and clear despite her failing strength. "Break the chains that bind your mind before they shackle your hands. Question orders that violate conscience. Remember that empires fall, but how we treat each other echoes through centuries." As her voice faded, she pressed something into Adrian's palm, a fragment of the chain that had bound her on Grendel Station. "We choose freedom," she whispered, again and again. Her eyes closed for the final time as alarms continued to sound in distant corridors, marking the beginning of a revolution that would eventually transform the galaxy. In her private chambers, the Empress stared at a cracked hollow image displaying Lena's face, not as the revolutionary who had disrupted the ceremony, but as the sister who had been erased from imperial records centuries ago. The family resemblance was unmistakable across generations. Same determined jaw, same piercing gaze. Guilt weighed heavily as she issued orders. An immediate ceasefire against civilian protesters. Nullification of the Praetor Order that would have deployed Project Eradicator to incinerate Lena's memory from the collective consciousness. But even as these commands transmitted across Imperial channels, reports flooded in of sabotage, already disabling the project's infrastructure. Rebel cells activated by Kira's network were ensuring that Lena's testimony would endure. Across multiple star systems, the uprising spread like wildfire. Clandestine cells that had been quietly seeded during Adrian and Lena's journey rose simultaneously. Sleeper agents embedded in communications hubs broadcast fragments of Lena's story on unauthorized frequencies. Imperial Command found itself fighting a war against information rather than armies, and discovering that the former was far more difficult to contain. Street art appeared overnight in every major city, a stylized emblem merging Lena's silhouette with a shattered shackle. The phrase, "We remember," became a rallying cry, whispered between citizens or defiantly spray-painted across Imperial monuments. True to his promise, Adrian ensured that Lena's final testament, her Imperial confession, reached every corner of the galaxy. With help from sympathetic starport governors and transport pilots who had grown weary of Imperial censorship, he copied thousands of data cores containing her words and seeded them into routine shipping channels. Cargo vessels carried her truth as contraband, more precious than any physical goods. In private moments between his frenetic work, Adrian carved Lena's final words onto half of a broken chain link salvaged from her shackles. "We choose freedom," again and again. He kept this fragment with him always, a tangible reminder of the woman whose courage had transformed his understanding of resistance. 5 years passed. The Acer Empire, shaken to its foundations by the revelations that began on that fateful day of remembrance, underwent profound reformation, now called the Acer Confederation. Its new constitution included a clause that would have pleased Lena. No order shall supersede the dignity of sentient life. Junior cadets at the military academy studied her case as a mandatory ethics course, debating the moment when obedience must yield to conscience. The Museum of Imperial Triumph, once dedicated to military victories and territorial conquests, had been largely dismantled. In its place stood a simpler memorial hall that acknowledged both achievements and atrocities with equal honesty. A single exhibit remained from the original collection, the rusted sword, Conscience, mounted under glass with the inscription, "This blade never cut flesh, it cut lies." Each day, anonymous bouquets of wildflowers appeared beneath it, left by citizens who understood that freedom required constant renewal. Adrian Serac, now considered elder among the Rim communities, established a modest mechanics workshop on the industrial moon, Kepler 7a. The Glasswing, repaired and upgraded, occasionally ferried him to distant systems where the story of Lena Valsaria needed reinforcement. But mostly, it remained docked at the small port near his shop. On his workbench sat the chain fragment from Lena's original shackles. He used it as a paperweight, a daily reminder that kept her sacrifice present in his thoughts. Beside it lay the rusted sword, returned to him by the Confederation government in recognition of his role in the Reformation. He had declined offers to house it permanently in museums, feeling that the blade belonged in working hands rather than behind glass. A young woman named Zara had become his apprentice, learning the technical skills of salvage engineering alongside the more difficult lessons of ethical choice. She reminded him sometimes of Kira, the same fierce idealism, the same certainty that information deserved to flow freely. "Small actions matter," he often told her, while demonstrating how to repair complex machinery. Every stand for truth, every moment of compassion, plants seeds that can topple empires. On remote farming worlds, children learned Lena's story in hollow classrooms. Street murals depicted a solitary woman carving names on metal walls, a visual reminder that memory itself could be an act of revolution. Citizens engaged in open debates that would have been treasonous under the old empire. Which chains will we choose to break today? On particularly clear nights, Adrian would sometimes stand beneath Kepler 7a's starlit sky, watching cargo shuttles streak overhead, each one potentially carrying copies of Lena's testimony to worlds he would never visit. During these moments of quiet reflection, he would whisper her motto to the void, a promise renewed with each repetition. Freedom is not given, it is chosen, again and again, even when the cost is everything you love. Somewhere in that infinite darkness, he liked to imagine, Lena heard him, not as a ghost or spirit, but as an idea that could never again be erased from the collective memory of a civilization that had finally learned to value conscience over obedience, truth over stability, and freedom over fear.